And Seattle's police watchdog says an officer didn't mean to pepper spray a child during a protest back in May.
It was an incident that attracted a lot of attention on social media. The findings were laid out in a report about complaints over police conduct during anti-racism protests. King 5's Britt Moore takes a look at the other findings of that report.
112 days after the first protests in Seattle, it's laid out on paper. For the first time, findings are released on if Seattle police acted appropriately during protests following the death of George Floyd by Minneapolis police. Seattle's Office of Police Accountability says it received about 19,000 complaints since the start of the protests in May. 13,000 of those complaints were related to this image of a young child screaming after being hit with pepper spray. Video of that incident sparked outrage. After reviewing cell phone video and police body cams, the OPA says the use of pepper spray was, quote, lawful and proper, adding that the officer did not target the child and that the pepper spray was in fact intended for a protester who was pushing into the police line. OPA Director Andrew Meyerberg wrote in the report that, quote, this is one of the hardest cases that I, as the OPA director, have had to consider during my nearly 3 years in office, but that the office is required to look at all of the facts, not just those presented on social media or captured in a short video. The Community Police Commission released this statement about the findings, saying it is important to know that even though the OPA investigation may find an officer's actions did not violate any current policies, that does not make the officer's decision just. While the OPA cleared police of wrongdoing in the pepper spraying incident, that was not the case for an incident involving allegations that an officer placed his knee on a protester's neck during an arrest on May 30th. The report says OPA identified that that officer's knee was on the individual's neck for about 13 seconds, finding that this was an improper use of force. Complaints about officer misconduct during protests have resulted in 118 cases. Today's report detailed just 5 of those cases. The OPA says it will continue to post updates every 2 weeks. Britt Moore, King 5 News.